We have been looking at chapter 6 again, covering the subject of the context of our plan. And we've already previously gone over the fact that when we look at the context of our clan and all five of these contexts, that we want to always keep in mind that the contexts, these five contexts of purpose discovery, is rooted in the call to discipleship by Jesus. That's mentioned in Luke chapter 14, verse 25 through 32. And when we talk about the call of discipleship, we also want to keep in mind what we're talking about is the call of discipleship is designed to bring our lives into alignment with the will and purpose of God here on earth. Okay, so when we talk about the call of discipleship, we also need to understand what the call of discipleship is designed to do. The call of discipleship is designed to bring our lives into alignment with the will and the purpose of God here on earth. That's why Jesus prayed what he prayed in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Okay? We must also, it's designed that we become one with God, one with ourselves, and then one with each other. When we bring our lives into alignment with the will and purpose of God, here's what it accomplishes. And here is what the call of discipleship is designed to do. Again, the call of discipleship is designed to bring our lives into alignment with the will and purpose of God here on earth. When that happens, we experience oneness with God, oneness with ourselves, and oneness with each other. Okay? So Jesus gives in a hierarchy of relationships in Luke 14:25. And the author picks up on these hierarchy of relationships. And in these hierarchies of relationships, when we order our lives according to these hierarchy of relationships, they bring our lives into alignment with what? The will and purpose of God. Thank you, Brother Joseph. Brother Joseph tracks with me all the time. The will and purpose of God. So when we look at these contexts, we've got to understand, again, the ultimate outcome, the reason for, is that when you align your lives in accordance to these hierarchy of relationships, what they will do is bring your life, my life, into alignment with the will and with the purpose of God here on earth, okay? And when that occurs, you will experience oneness with God, oneness with yourself, and oneness with others, okay? And so we are now studying each hierarchy of relationship one by one. And the last few classes, what we've been doing is talking about the relationship, the hierarchy of relationship that has to do with what we have come to call our single most important relationship with God. And we wanted to pause right there because it is so important that we get this concept or come to understand what it really means to be in relationship with God. And so I want to, and what that means. We've talked about it for years. Matter of fact, we articulate it all the time. I mean, if there was any phrase that's repeated more than probably any other among our fellowship, is this phrase here: my single most important relationship with God. But the question is, how many of us are really experiencing that? And do we really know what that really is? And so I really want to drill down on that, because if in fact we don't really come to understand what that is, notice what we just said. The hierarchy of relationships is designed to do what? Bring us into alignment. Okay? Bring us into alignment. With who? With God, and then who? Ourselves, and then with what? With others. Now, what that says then, if I'm experiencing in my life right now, conflict with myself, If I'm experiencing conflict with others in my life, it may be my husband, it may be my wife, it may be my sisters, it may be my brothers. What should that be an indice of? Possibly. Based on what we just said. My relationship with God. Good question. Okay, you know what Sister Jackson says? Okay, does that mean, and this is what we're going to explore actually today. If I'm having conflict with someone else, relationally, does it necessarily mean that I'm the one out of alignment and they're not? Good question. Okay. Let's put that on the back burner. Okay. But here's what I want us to. Here's the thing that I want us to think about on the forefront. If you have a car and you drive a car, the newer cars, not so much as the older cars. When a car leaves a factory, it is designed to, when it leaves the factory, it's designed to function at its ultimate peak performance. Would y'all agree? I mean, leaving the factory. Okay, leaving the factory, it will be humming. Nothing wrong, no flaws. Why?
Brand new.
It's brand new. And when it being brand new, it's leaving the factory, everything is in alignment. Everything is functioning. Everything is all the coordinates, everything is aligned. Okay? Over a period of time, however, when you drive that car and use that car, the tendency is for things to get out of alignment. So in the older cars in particular, after a certain period of time, Sister Emery, some of the younger ones may not really remember this, but you know, when we used to take the cars after a certain period of time in driving the car, what would we have to do? We have to take it in to get a tune-up. Okay? The tune-up was designed to bring, knowing that over a period of time things get out of alignment, and so that you have to go back in to the shop and then realign that car, and then it start performing back to the original, the manufacturer original alignment, and it performs in its peak performance. Now here's the thing that we got to understand. When it comes to our relationship with God, when Adam failed, okay, all of mankind went out of alignment. And what threw everything out of alignment was when he, in his relationship with God, he chose to actually separate himself from God. Everything went into chaos. Everything. And when we think about that original relationship, notice the sequence of order in terms of what happened. God gave Adam a command to keep, correct? And the command to keep was, do not eat of this tree, for the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. All right? And then the day came when Adam began, he did eat. And at that moment, notice the first thing that happened. After eating, God then, Adam has always had a relationship with God. They were one with each other. But after this particular response, after this particular act, God comes to Adam and he just raises one question. And the question was, anybody remember the question? Where are you? Okay. Where are you? Now, notice the nature of that question. Where are you? Where are you? It's a question of proximity. Was it that God didn't know where Adam was? Where has Adam always been before this question? Where was Adam? Where was Adam before the question?
Right relationship.
In the garden. So is he not in the garden now? Okay.
He was in alignment with God. He was in attunement and alignment with God before the moment.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a geographical question.
Right.
Okay.
Same place.
Adam is at that point no longer in his presence. It's not geographical. He's no longer in his presence. So when we talk about relationally speaking, Adam is no longer in alignment with God, relationally. He's outside of the presence of God. And then notice, consequently, the series of events that begins to happen as a result of him being out of alignment. Notice what we are hoping to accomplish in chapter 6, to bring us all back into alignment. Okay? When we are in alignment, we are at one with God, and then we're one with ourselves. Adam was no longer at one with himself and God. Now, and then when we're at one with God and then one with ourselves, it allows us to be at one with others. Now, notice the next other in the consequence of things. God says, "Where are you, Adam? And where art thou?" And he said, "I was afraid. And out of my fear, my response was to go and hide." Okay. Hide from where? Notice, it's not a geographical thing. I'm hiding from your presence. Okay. And then he says, "What's happened here, Adam? What went wrong? What happened?" And what was Adam's response? Oh, no, he raised another question. Did you eat of the tree? And then what was Adam's response? He said, no. No, he didn't say no. He did say no, but in an implicit way. He said, "It's the woman that you gave me." Okay. It was the woman. Now notice, he's out of alignment with his relationship with God. Now he's out of alignment with himself. He's hiding. And now he's out of alignment with the relationship of the one who was next closest to him in regards to his relationship with God. So he's out of alignment with his wife. And from that point on, we see being played out in history this continual perpetuation of mankind being out of alignment relationally, which has permeated our world. That's why there is so much conflict interrelationally with mankind in general. Everybody see that? So, what I'm suggesting to you, and what the author suggested in chapter 6, is that when we begin to look at these hierarchy of relationships, and we begin to make it a point to make our relationships prioritize according to this hierarchy, it will bring order back to our own lives. But it begins where? It begins with our single most important relationship with God. So let's talk about that in more detail. Because if we don't get that relationship correct, what will happen is the relationship that we have with ourselves won't be correct. And if the relationship with ourselves is not correct, the quality of relationships that we have with others won't be what it could be and should be. And in most cases, I've been doing this thing long enough. I'm talking about as a leader and as an elder in particular. When you sit down and talk with a lot of people, some years ago, based on the values, I began to do this, and whenever I have to counsel with people, especially if it has to do with marital kind of situations. People come in, and before we begin to discuss anything, my first question is to the individuals alone. Is this question. Not what's going on with y'all,
Right.
but I want to know from each individual what's going on with you and God.
Right.
That we start there. How's your relationship with the Lord? And see, that kind of, you know what that does when you start there? It changes everything, because nobody wants to really look there.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, they really don't. They don't. It's amazing to me how the people will, really push back on the notion of really starting a conversation from that point of view. Okay. That's not what I came here for. We wanted to talk about, But what happens in most cases is if you begin there and you start to look at what's happening with my relationship with God, how is it? Am I in alignment with Him? Has my focus been with Him? Has my pursuit been to please Him? And it's amazing when you begin to start from that as a premise, how all the other stuff begins to actually kind of take care of itself. All right, I'm reading faces here. Okay, that's some tough stuff. But so let's talk about this question we've been looking at. We can refer to, look at page chapter 6, and if we raise these questions here, we've been raising these questions. What is the significant, most important relationship with God? I want to start with this, and we kind of hit on it already. What do we mean when we talk about, what does it mean, the term single most important relationship with God? Single most important relationship. Y'all think about that word. Think about it. Single most important relationship with God. When we say that, what do we mean in words? What do we mean? What do we mean? Single most. What's the difference between relationship with God, my relationship with God, and the idea of single most important relationship with God? Is there a difference between relationship with God and then saying the single most important relationship with God? Sister Watson, Sister Watson, go right ahead.
So a relationship with God just implies, I have a relationship with people that I see once a year. I mean, it doesn't mean it's necessarily a close relationship, it's just a relationship. But I've always taken the phrase single most important relationship, not focused at God, like it's a relationship with God or it's a single most important relationship with God, but focused within my life. The single most important relationship within my life is to be with God.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
So it shouldn't be, my single most important relationship shouldn't be with my husband, shouldn't be with my parents, shouldn't be with my children. My single most important relationship should be with God. That's the relationship that should take priority in my life.
Okay, what I hear her saying, and if anybody has anything to add, you can add to that, but I hear her saying, like, by quantifying the idea of single most important relationship, it denotes the relationship that she has with God from all other relationships. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes.
Okay. Is that what we mean by that phrase? I mean, is there anybody who would differ from that in terms of your definition? Okay. So it becomes the very most important relationship out of all other relationships, right? Okay. So we begin looking at how do you maintain, or what does it mean to have a single most important relationship? I want to park that. And then we'll talk about how to maintain it. But what does it mean to have a single most important relationship with God? Now, on Wednesday night, Brother Bailey led a discussion, and he talked about the idea of the notion of trust. Y'all remember that? And actually, the Sunday before, we left our last class talking about trust. Okay? And I wanna continue to expound on that idea so that in your own life you will be able to see and define for yourself in terms of what it means to have a single most important relationship with God. Because what I've experienced in terms of as people come to church week in and week out, and especially during the response times, and I listen to the responses of people, I question in some cases if a person really knows what it really means to be in a single most important relationship with God. Because most people base their maintaining or being in the single most important relationship with God based on whatever they may have experienced that day, that week, or what the current events might be going on. And if the present current events are such to where it may have challenged, it may be challenging, and you, depending on your response to the challenges, if I hadn't responded properly, I come down and I say, Lord, I haven't been in my single most important relationship. Have y'all heard that? Y'all know what I'm talking about? The challenges of life are such that, they are so heavy or so challenging. And in those moments, I may not have responded appropriately. And so, based on just the happenings of the day, that's how I view what my single most important relationship is at that time. So let's look at that. What does it look like to maintain and be in a single most important relationship with God? I ask, and it's so good to see Sister Wall this morning. Let's give her a lovely clap. And here's how the Spirit of God works. My wife will testify to this. I had planned on calling Sister Wall yesterday, all day, and and I didn't get a chance to make that call. Part of making the call was for what I wanted to do in class today, okay? And I got hit again with this bug that keeps trying to come, and it kind of threw my state off, and I didn't make the call. And Brother Ray Gale was another one that I had in mind talking to for the purpose of class today. I was able to contact Brother Ray Gale, and I'm glad Sister Wall was here because I'll be able to do what I wanted to do anyway with the class this morning. I want us to see something in class today that helps us to define what it looks like in terms of our single most important relationship with God. One of the things that we need to know that when it comes to being in a relationship with God, we need to know there's nothing, first of all, that can separate you from your relationship with God. Well, that may be. When I say nothing, I know, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say nothing can separate you from the Word of God? I mean, from your relationship with God. What comes to your mind? What comes to your mind? Sin. All right. Okay. Yeah, that's not right, Brother Jackson. Sin can separate. Sin can separate you from your relationship with God. Okay. Let's talk about that. Okay. Typically speaking, sin. When we think about sin, sin can only separate you from your relationship with God if you allow it to. It really can't. You know why? Sin has already been dealt with. It really can't. It has no power over you. And the fact that we sin, or if we sin, again, only affects you to the extent that you allow it to. I often wonder what would have happened when God asked Adam, when he failed, that Adam would have just said, Lord, I sin. Would that have changed the course of history? Because that would have put God in a situation. Okay? But I want to go somewhere with this, okay? But typically what happens is, the thing when we are challenged in our lives with our greatest challenges, what we have a tendency to do in those moments, rather than understand the quality of why we have what we call the single most important relationship with God for, it's in really those moments that having and knowing that relationship exists carries its most importance. Okay? And you'll know to the degree that of your intimacy with God is in those moments. You'll know in the moments of trial or testing how to measure what you have called your single most important relationship with God. So, how do you know? How do you measure your single most important relationship with God? When you try it in an area of your life with something that is really meaningful to you at that moment. That can be a lot of things. But I asked Brother Rangel to be ready to respond. Many people don't know. I mean, we do know that Brother Rangel has been challenged for how many months now, Brother Rangel?
Well, it started in November of last year.
Almost a year ago today, right? And a year ago today, expressed a challenge. What was the challenge?
Well, my challenge that I faced was I was diagnosed with cancer. Okay, so, and it really didn't affect me that much. I mean, it's always hard when you're told that you have cancer. But really, it didn't really hit home, or it didn't affect me that much as far as my spiritual belief. Because, like I've stated before, because of the teachings that I've received here, I was able to know who I really am. You know, I am a spirit, I have been made in God's image and likeness. And then just, you know, relying on that. And, you know, the single most important relationship is basically what I depended on, you know. And to me, having a single most important relationship with God is you go to Him, you tell Him your most inner worries, your problems before you tell anybody else. Because, I mean, who better else to go to than to God? So when they told me this, I said, okay, we'll see what the next step is. You know, a lot of people, when you get faced with the challenge, they always say, why me? That's one question I never asked God was why.
You never asked that
I
question?
never asked why.
Why did you ask why? That seems like a natural question.
Because I knew, back from other class, I knew who I was. I've been given a lot of scriptures. We've studied a lot of lessons that Brother Jackson has brought to me that allowed me to know that no matter what, God will be with me. That He will, keep me, for whatever reason, basically to fulfill His purpose in my life and His.
Okay, real quick question, because I want to use another example. Brother Rangel, through this whole journey, this process, can you describe this real briefly, relationally speaking, your relationship with God through this whole process? Describe that for us.
Well, my relationship with God, I thought was good at the time, but as I went through this, it basically helped me get stronger and depend on Him more. Our relationship got closer to Him. Even when, it's basically just on how you see it. I would go to work and they couldn't believe I was at work. Especially after my surgery. And you've been taught, that life and death is on your tongue, so they would ask me, how do you feel? I said, I feel great. I would not allow them to see me that I was hurting or I wasn't feeling good. I just, continued that way, just letting them know that God was taking care of me and He's going to take care of everything.
All right. It almost seems impossible that under circumstances like that one's relationship with God can actually get closer. That almost sounds insane. You would think that your relationship with God would be closer when everything is going good. One would think. Okay? Now I'm going to use another illustration. I was profoundly impacted when Michelle came a few weeks ago. And it took me a few days, really. I just kept, she came down and, she spoke to the church, but also she did a Facebook page, a post once. And I got to post. What I was going to do, I was thinking that you were still in Dallas. I was going to call and I was going to talk to Michelle so I could get a report and then kind of get permission, but I'm going to go ahead and do this anyway. I'm going to read this post, okay? I'm going to read this post and then we're going to talk to Mom, okay? Here's this post that she wrote after she had received the diagnosis, okay, from the doctor. And then here's what she wrote. On this day, 10 years ago, I watched my mother go through her first steps towards remission, a bilateral mastectomy. Now it's my turn. I've had my entire life to prepare for this moment. This is over. I've had my entire life to prepare for this moment, and I am ready. I know many people think it's weird that I'm peaceful, but I have nothing to fear. This path is already laid ahead of me, and I will make the journey. Now, that's not to say that I have not had an emotional time, accepting there will be certain things that I will miss out on. Not that I don't have an emotional time, understanding that life going forward, I'm going to have to accept the fact that there's going to be some things that I was hoping for to experience in my life that I now know that I won't be able to have those experiences. It's not ignoring that.
Yeah.
Okay. That I will miss out on. But there will be other options for my new body. Keep my support system and I lifted up as we go through this journey. If you have any questions, that's the post. Y'all see that?
Yep.
Y'all see that? That blew me away. To come to have that kind of understanding, and what that said to me as we began to study this notion of having the single most important relationship with God. She does. Unequivocally. Can't face life like that without being in alignment with God. So Mom, speak to that. if you don't mind. How is she doing, first?
She's doing great. She's at the house right now. As I brought her with me, I have to do certain things for her that she can't do for herself right now. But she's doing great. Her pain level was minimal. She's moving around. She's just like Michelle to me. Gabby came by last night and visited with her, so she's Michelle. She was a little tired, but that's because she stayed at the shop with me all day on Friday. So, but other than that, she's doing good. Her spirit is good.
Tell her what happened.
Oh, I will, for sure.
All right. Now, I want to end with this class. I want to end with this. We talked about on Wednesday the difference between belief and trust. If y'all can stay here just a second, those who are leaving out, just a second. Belief and trust. Here's the difference. Let me illustrate that. And this is the point of knowing whether or not how to measure your single most important relationship with God. It boils down to this idea of belief and trust. That happened last time I began to try to tell this straight. Give me a mic. Y'all remember there was, in the 1800s, there was this acrobat who performed this stunt of stretching a tightrope across the Niagara Falls. And what he would do is actually get on that tightrope and walk that tightrope across the falls. And what he would do is he began to build up his repertoire where at one time he would get out on the tightrope and walk partial way out and then come back. And the people would be astounded, at this feat, at this particular act. And then finally one time he upped the antes by actually getting a wheelbarrow on the tightrope. And not only did he walk halfway out, but he went all the way across the falls on the wheelbarrow, and the crowd went crazy. And just amazed that he could do that. And then he turned to the crowd and he asked a question, and the question was, do y'all believe that I can go back? Everybody says, oh, yes, we believe. And then he turned to the crowd and says to the crowd, who would want to get in the barrel with me as I go back?
Yeah.
Now check it out. Now they all believe that he could go back.
Go back.
But nobody wanted to trust the fact that he could. Now, here's the point. A lot of times in our relationship with God, we believe that he can.
Come on.
But do we trust that he will?
Yeah.
There will come a point in time, and this is how you know, you don't know trust until you trust. You won't know trust until you trust. You can say, I believe all you want, but there will come a point in time where you have to trust him. And it's in the moment of trust that you can really authentically say that I really have a single most important relationship with God. And we'll build up on that on Wednesday night. You got to trust him. All right?